former governor general can leave office and still expense more than $200,000 to taxpayers every year for the rest of their life for 6 months after their death. The wasteful spending culture at Riddlewall has gone on for too long.
Hey everyone, it's Franco Terrazzano, your federal director here in Ottawa. You're listening to the Canadian Taxpayers podcast. I'm joined by two of my colleagues, Mr. Ryan Thorpe, our investigative journalist, also in Ottawa, and Nicholas Gagnon. He's our Quebec director. And we got a doozy of a story for you folks here today because Ryan, he broke another big story that landed on the front page of the National Post. Why don't you tell our folks exactly what you dug up?
Yeah, well, Governor General Mary Simon and her band of bureaucrats racked up a $71,000 bill on Icelimo Luxury Travel during her 4-day trip to Iceland to attend the Arctic Circle Assembly. And I think I might just need to repeat myself there one time. They spent $71,000 on Icelimo Luxury Travel during a 4-day trip.
That I don't even know how that's even possible. I mean, like, folks, like $71,000, folks. You could spend less money just buying a brand new BMW.
Well, Franco, she also could have bought a 2012 Dodge Challenger stretch limo. I went and checked, and that would have also saved taxpayers money. There is really no shortage of absurdity when it comes to this particular story. But so if you go to Icelimo's website to give a sense of, what kind of services they were getting, they specialize in, quote, genuine luxury travel life experiences crafted with flair and finesse entirely around your dreams. But maybe the most absurd thing of all in this entire saga is that Simon's hotel was an 8-minute walk away from the main conference center that she was there to attend. And to help put things in perspective, Iceland, the entire island, is about a quarter of the size of Calgary.
This is bizarre. I can actually hear some people's blood boiling out in Brooks over there. Some people listen to this podcast. I can hear it. I can hear it all the way from Alberta. Now, look, $71,000 on a 4-day trip for luxury transportation services is absolutely ridiculous. But that's not the end of the wasteful spending on this 4-day trip to Iceland, is it, Ryan?
No, it most certainly is not. So they spent $71,000 on Icelimo Luxury Travel, but all told, the entire bill was around $300,000 charge to taxpayers. About 10 grand was dropped on a Friends of Canada reception, whatever that is, and about another $115,000 was spent on hotel refreshments. And also, for some reason, the GG on this particular trip needed a 15-person delegation to come with her. That included her husband, her secretary, of course, her director of communications, her manager of strategic communications, 2 aides-de-camp, and then her official photographer. Yeah, I'm not sure what that is, to tell you the truth, but she needed not one, but 2 of them. The delegation could have cut down on hotel costs by renting out an entire 9-bedroom farmhouse on a 700-acre estate that features a geothermal hot pool. And this was about an hour's drive away from the city. That would have saved money for taxpayers, and they could have booked it out in its entirety for more than 40 days and nights. We also know, because we got our hands on the in-flight catering receipts, that someone had a $602 beefsteak bourguignon. I'm not even really sure how to pronounce that. I've never seen it on a menu before, with mashed potatoes, followed by a $238 mousse with crumble and strawberry sauce for dessert.
Mwah! Sounds delicious, doesn't it? Well, look, hey, Ryan, great job digging this up, man. As always, don't get tired of seeing the great coverage coming from your investigative journalism stories. Of course, this one also landed its way on the front page of the National Post. We also saw the Sun newspaper chain cover it. We got radio coverage all across the country. We had coverage in French out there in Quebec, and the Governor General's trip also made some news splashes in Iceland, right? We saw the Iceland's biggest newspaper news outlet cover the story of the Governor General's frivolous spending as well. Now, gents, I got to be honest with you. I'm really struggling with this story. I'm struggling to figure out what is the most bizarre part of this story. You know, was it the fact that the governor general could have bought a brand new BMW, drove it around the island, that left the keys in the car before heading to the airport and still save money? Or is the most bizarre part of the story is the governor general racked up a $71,000 luxury transportation bill when her hotel was an 8-minute walk away from the main conference center? Or was the most bizarre part that the governor general brought her director of communications and her manager of strategic communications, and neither one of them said, hey, boss, maybe spending more money than the average Canadian earns in a year on luxury transportation services isn't exactly the best PR move right now. But with that being said, let's maybe try to focus on the bigger picture here, Nicholas, as I bring you in. Unfortunately, this crazy spending is not just the exception with that one Iceland trip. It's really becoming the rule, isn't it?
Absolutely. And it seems like Mary Simon and her bureaucrats are going out of their way to spend as much of taxpayers' money as possible. Just
Sure
last
does.
year, Governor General Mary Simon, just last year, her and her entourage of 30 people spent more than $1 million on a week-long trip to Expo 2020 in Dubai. That's a lot of money. And why did we send 30 people? What value did taxpayers get from this trip? Sadly, they will just not tell us. And that's the same trip where they spent about $100,000 on airplane food. And, you remember the CTF got the receipt from that trip, and it shows that they were feasting on beef Wellington with red juice, beef carpaccio, and stuffed pork tenderloin. Even I have some issues saying that. But that was the only lavish expedition that they had. Like the governor general and another supercharged entourage of about 30 people also spent $800,000 on a 4-day trip to a book fair in Germany. The entire cost of that trip, including the GG expenses, was somehow around the $18 million. And the worst part, again, is that this delegation spent about 6 figures on airplane food. Imagine my shock.
Okay, so let me just recap a couple things there, because Nicholas has just been throwing waste bombs at you there, folks. Yes, you heard it right. The government actually spent 18 million smackers, 18 million bucks on a 4-day book fair in Germany. Now, the government's defense of this spending was, we were the guest of honor. But, it got me thinking, guest of honor, right? When you're the guest of honor, people throw you a party. You don't pay an exorbitant tab like $18 million. And Nicholas, you're kind of saying, what kind of value are we getting for any of these trips? Well, I have my opinions. I'll let our listeners ask themselves what value they're getting from Trudeau's government globetrotters. But, the crazy part of all of this is let's remember, folks, it's not just this governor general, Mary Simon, who's been wasting money like crazy. The real issue is the office of the governor general. The real issue is Rideau Hall. The real issue is that we've seen a massive amount of wasteful spending from governors general, not just this one, but in the past as well.
Oh, absolutely. You're entirely right. The wasteful spending culture has a long legacy at Rideau Hall. For example, the former Governor General Julie Payette spent about $100,000 a month in travel expenses before COVID-19. And she for $500,000 in renovations at Rideau Hall, and she had not moved in. That's the price of a current house in Canada, and she did not spend a single moment in Rideau Hall for that period. And let's not forget about Julie Payette's pension problem. Payette served on governor general for a little more than 3 years, and she's still eligible to collect more than $4 million to her pension by the age of 90. And of course, we have to mention Adrienne Clarkson. She billed taxpayers for more than $1 million after she retired. How did she do that? Well, it's simple. Former governor general can leave office and still expense more than $200,000 to taxpayers every year for the rest of their life for 6 months after their death. The wasteful spending culture at Rideau Hall has gone on for too long, and it's time for either Trudeau or any prime minister or finance minister to go in there, end these perks, and cut the budget.
Yeah. And actually, let me chime in there as well, because a lot of this crazy spending, quite frankly, it's going on all across government, right? Trudeau billed taxpayers for a $6,000 hotel room during the Queen's funeral, right? Trudeau also spent $61,000 on hotel rooms in New York at a 2-day anti-poverty summit where, for whatever reason, the government had to book 39 hotel rooms in downtown Manhattan. We sent the largest delegation of any G7 country to COP26, where Freeland somehow managed to book a room in the wrong city, and then taxpayers had to shell out $3,000 for a luxury chauffeur service to cart her back and forth. Right. So it's just everywhere you look. It's not limited to Rideau Hall, although we're seeing a lot of these crazy waste stories coming out of Rideau Hall. But everywhere you look, all across government, it's a glut of waste. Right. Pick a department at random. And if you do enough digging, you're going to turn up a waste story.
And enough digging, that's being generous. You know what I mean? Like, just peel back the most thin layer and you're going to be covered in waste. Isn't that right? Okay, folks, these stories, we talk about the waste all the time, and I think it could be easy to get discouraged, right? It almost feels sometimes like you bang your head against the wall and all you do is give yourself a bloody nose. But don't get discouraged, because, we have shown in the past that taxpayers, when we hold politicians accountable, when we continue to hound them, they have no choice but to do the right thing and end the waste. Let me just give you guys an example, right? The Mission Cultural Fund. Well, earlier this spring, the government quietly announced that it was scrapping Global Affairs Canada's, the department their Mission Cultural Slush Fund. That's the same slush fund that was used to pay old people in other countries to talk about their sex lives or to promote an Margaret Atwood book in Australia. And it was also used to put on a sex toy extravaganza in Germany. Well, remember, the Canadian Taxpayers Federation dug up those wasteful spending stories. Our supporters hounded those politicians like crazy, and eventually they had no choice but to end the wasteful spending. So I just want to make sure, we stay in the game, right? We only lose when we give up. So there's still light at the end of the tunnel. Let's stay positive. We got to keep hounding away, and eventually these politicians will be forced to do something right. Now, Ryan, great job, man. Great digging. Love to see this story land on the front page of the National Post and just get a bunch of coverage across Canada and in Iceland. That is awesome. And huge shout out to our supporters, right? We wouldn't be able to do this if it wasn't for you chipping in both with your support, sharing stories online, and of course, financially. We always appreciate that. And if you want a little bit more info on this latest example of Governor General waste, well, we'll link to our show notes, the National Post story. Anyways, thank you, everyone.